Alright, in this video we're going to talk about super global arrays in PHP. So in PHP there are some arrays that are just automatically there and created for you, and they come in really handy because they have all kinds of information of interest to us as developers. So we'll talk about the different kinds of super global arrays in PHP in this video. Make sure you've started your Apache server, so open up the XAMPP control panel and make sure that the Apache server is started. So I've got mine started already here. Let's go ahead and see, make sure you've got the sample file, so that's superglobalarrays.php, and I've put it in my PHP folder where we been putting our other PHP sample code files. Here's the starter code for that, and let's go ahead and load it up in the browser. That should be right here. So it's just got a simple form in it right now, and we'll play around with this form in a little bit while we're learning about super global arrays. Now remember that in order to load a PHP page you have to go through the web server. So you need to type in localhost, and that'll take you to the doc root directory, and then from there, at least where I'm putting my files, I'd have to go to the advanced web dev folder, then into the PHP folder, and there I'll find the starter files here. Okay, so now we're ready to get going. So back in the code over here, I've got a form that I created, and I didn't even bother with putting the standard HTML elements in place. You don't necessarily need those when you're just doing sample code. Of course I would need those if we were making a real web page, but since we're just dinking around with code, I just put the form element and nothing else as far as HTML code goes. Alright, and now here you guys know that PHP code goes in between these delimiters here. So the code starts with the PHP code starts with this, and then we want to end our PHP code with that right there. Those are the PHP delimiters, we call them. Anything in between those is going to be interpreted as PHP code by the web server. Now let's just go ahead and I'll show you a few of these super global arrays here. So I'm actually, before all the comments in the PHP code, let's try this here. Let's just do a var dump here, and then what we want to pass into the var dump is one of these super global arrays. So what I'm going to pass in as the parameter to var dump is going to be $, underscore, and then all caps server. So this variable is automatically there for us. It gets created by PHP when the page gets processed by the Apache web server, and this is an associative array with a bunch of information in it. So let's go ahead and see what this gives us here when we save this, and then go back over to the browser and hit refresh. So here it is. Now this is hard to read when you do a var dump, but you can see all the keys here. These are key value pairs. It's an associative array. But what I want to do is let's set this up so that we can read it a little bit better. So I'm going to create a function that's going to format all this data into a table so we can see it better. So anyways, going back to the code here, all these super global arrays follow the same naming convention. They start with a $, and then an underscore, and then all caps whatever the name of the array is. So we'll see the different super global arrays here. This one is the server super global array, and it has information in it about the web server. Okay, so but it's hard to read it in a var dump. So what we're going to do here is comment out this line of code. And then let's scroll on. Let's see here. What do we want to do? Where do we want to do this? Step one is to define a function. We're going to create our own dump function that's going to format the code a little bit nicer. So let's actually go down here underneath all the comments, and we'll define a function that looks like this. So just to get things started, we're going to define a function called dump, and it's going to take two parameters. It's going to take a name, and then we'll actually pass in one of the super global arrays as the second parameter here. So for now, just to get this thing started, all we're going to do is we're going to create an HTML string that has the name parameter in it, and then we'll go ahead and return that. Now I left a few blank lines in between right there because we're going to add a little more code. Go ahead and get this code in place first, and then I'll show you what else to add here. So what I'm going to add right here is an if statement. So I'm going to paste it in, and then you can go ahead and copy it. There it is. Now this will take a little, you got to eyeball this real good, but what we're doing here is we're going to check and see if the array that gets passed in is not empty. So if it's not empty, we want to take all the key value pairs out of it and display it as a table. So take your time on this. There's first thing we're doing inside the if statement is we're concatenating a table element onto our HTML. So that should look familiar to you. And remember, to concatenate in PHP, you want to use the dot equal sign, not plus equals. And then what we're going to do is we're going to loop through all the keys inside the array. So here's a loop that you saw in the last video to loop through an associative array. And inside the body of the loop here, we're going to concatenate a row onto our table, and the row is going to consist of two cells. The first cell is going to display the key, and the second cell is going to display the value. Now I don't have to use all the string concatenation characters here because I'm using variable interpolation. Now remember that if you wrap a string inside double quotes, that means that any variables will get interpolated. So here I've got my key variable, which was declared here in the for loop up above. And then so the first cell is going to display the key, and the second cell in our row is going to display the value. Okay, after the for each loop, then we're just concatenating the closing table element, or the closing table tag, into our HTML string. Okay, now this else portion is going to be what we output if the array happens to be empty. And we'll see some of these arrays might be empty depending on certain conditions. That's why I put that there. So there's your finished function. Okay, now after you get this typed in, we're going to go ahead and call this function. So to invoke the function, here's what we're doing here. Okay, we're going to echo out the results of our dump function call here. So what we're passing in is the name, a name which is a string, that's our first parameter, and then we're going to go ahead and pass in one of the super global arrays. So basically what our code's going to do is it's going to loop through all the keys inside the array that we pass in. In this case it's the server array, and then it'll display it nice and neat in a table like that. So let's go ahead and save this, Control S, and then go back over to the browser, and here's what we had before, but now here's what we have now, a lot easier to read. Okay, so here are all the keys in the server array, and here are all their values. So the server super global array gives you information about the server and other stuff too. Now I don't even know what a lot of this stuff means, so I'm just going to kind of scroll through and pick out the ones that are of interest to us. But first of all, I can use this key here if I want to figure out what browser is being used to make the request. So you can see here that the value of that key is right here. It's so the browser I'm using is a Mozilla-based browser on a Windows operating system. So that one can come in handy if you want to detect what browser your visitors are visiting your web pages with. So let's see what else we have here. Like I said, a lot of this stuff I haven't even used before, but I know there's some stuff that's of interest here. So the server name, this would be your domain name if you were running on a live web server, but for us, our server name is localhost. It shows us the path to the document root directory, so if you want to see that, you can access this key inside the server super global array, the document root key. And what else here? There should be, I think it should show the IP address somewhere of the computer that's making the request to. Where am I seeing that? Because that's always handy. Maybe that's in another one of these super global arrays. Okay, anyways, now let me show you what this would look like if I wanted to just access one of these keys inside the server array. Let's pick the document root here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this right here. So I'm going to select document root, that's our key, and copy it. And then let's go back over to our code here, and I'm going to comment out the line that dumps the server array out. So what it could, here's what I'm going to replace it with, echo And then if I want to look at a specific key within the server array, it would be like this. So the name of the array, in this case it's server, like that, and then we use bracket notation, and so I'm going to put a pair of square brackets and then quotation marks, and those can be either single quotes or double quotes, and then the key that we're interested in. So I'm going to paste in that key. So this will show me the path to the document root directory here, and in this case I'm just looking at one item within the server super global array. What we did before when we called our function up here is we iterated through all the keys. Here I'm just showing one of the keys. So let's see what this looks like right here. I'll save my changes, Alt tab back over to the browser and hit refresh, and here you can see that here's the document root key within the server super global array. Okay, let's go back over to the code. Whoops, did I show you that long enough? Sometimes I switch back and forth too fast, but there we go. There's the doc root key within the server super global array. Okay, let's go and comment out this line of code that we just wrote here. And let's go ahead and use our dump function to look at some of the other arrays that are available to us in PHP. So go ahead and type in this line of code here. This time we're interested in looking at the get super global array. So here we have our name that we're passing in, and that's arbitrary, I made that up. But what the array that we're passing into our dump function is the get super global array. Now remember, all these arrays, these super global arrays, start with a $sign and then an underscore, and then the name is actually all caps. So that's kind of how you can recognize them. I think there's 5 altogether. We're going to look at most of them, but not all of them. Okay, if I go ahead and save this and then Alt tab back to the browser here and hit refresh, now it's showing that this is empty. And the get super global array is to help you get variables out of the URL. So what I want you to do is go up to the URL bar on the top here and put in a question mark, and then let's add a variable to the URL string. So let's go name equals Bob. Okay, now go ahead and hit refresh or hit enter. Okay, now you can see that we can use this super global array to pull variables out of the URL string. Okay, so you've all seen this before, I'm sure, but you can attach variables to a URL. It starts with the question mark. So you have the URL first, and then to add the variables or these URL parameters, you put a question mark, and then the name of the parameter, and then equals whatever its value is. Now if I had more than one of these, I want to separate them with an ampersand. So if I put an ampersand here and type in age equals 7, like that, and then I hit enter, now you can see that when the page refreshes, there's two items in my get super global array. So anyways, that's how you can extract these URL parameters out of a URL string. Now we'll see how this comes into play later in the course. Okay, back over in the code here, let's go ahead and comment out that line that we just ran. And this time let's, whoops, what did I do here? I pressed something goofy. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to copy this line here and paste it below itself. And let's do post bars this time. So let's change that first parameter to post bars, and then the super global array that we're going to pass in is going to be the post super global array. Okay, now if we save this and Alt tab over to the browser and hit refresh, you'll see that it's saying that the post array is empty. Now the post array is what you use to get data that's sent from a form, and that's exactly why I decided to throw this form in the starter code here. So if you fill out the form like that, and I'll just check this box here, and then if you press the submit button right here, then we'll see what happens. So now once I've done that, now you can see all the data from the form is stored in our post super global array. So this will come in really handy for us because we'll be processing form data a lot. So to get the input that a user enters into a form in PHP, you can use that post super global array. So we'll see a lot of this moving forward here. So we covered a few of the super global arrays. We covered 3 of them. Now there's a few more. I think there's only there's what 5 or 6 altogether that you have access to, and we just covered the real basic ones, but we'll cover the other ones later in the course. So we'll see some more super global arrays later, but they come in real handy when you're programming.